Hey guys! So earlier this morning, my new wild Mustang arrived. She's a 4-year-old mare from Goshoot, Nevada. She arrived pretty early in the day, so I let her settle in for the morning and afternoon. She had traveled a very long way this week and was really needing some rest and a good snack. The first day is really just settling in, but I did head out in the late afternoon to see if I could tempt her with some alfalfa. I wasn't expecting her to eat out of my hand just then, but it never hurts to try. I tend to do a lot of experimenting at first, and really, you don't know what you're working with until you try. I then set up my little station by the pen to sit and wait and see if she would approach. I have a pile of regular hay that's more visible because of its volume, and then I'm throwing out alfalfa hay in a smaller pile. The alfalfa hay is the real treat, and Mustangs absolutely love it. Once I've set up my station, then the long waiting process begins. This is the first step in a Mustang taming program from Mustang Camp. The method utilizes principles of applied animal behavior to train equines and uses mostly positive reinforcement. I confess I haven't done the whole program, but I've mainly used the early steps to establish some trust. Right now, I feel like I do things differently with each Mustang. I can't really say that I have a method that I've adopted yet, but I do like to start with positive reinforcement, especially if I have a horse that I can't touch otherwise. But once I get the halter on, I like to switch to negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement means that the stimulus is removed to reinforce a behavior. Think pressure and release. You release the moment the horse does the correct thing. Anyway, when I get a new Mustang, I feel like I start with doing a lot of experimenting just to see what method I want to move forward with. The approach I'm starting with right now does require a good bit of patience. I'm not going to make you guys sit through all that, so I'm going to cut out the waiting, but I did want to let you know that it does require some time. Each horse is going to be different, and thankfully this horse came forward a lot faster than one of my other Mustangs did. I spent countless hours sitting out like this in the middle of winter with Sparrow. Now I'm starting this by sitting quietly, turned away with my gaze down to create a less intimidating posture. Unfortunately, one of my goats came by and she backed away. Then it was back to square one, more waiting. This waiting took a while, so I tossed some hay a little bit closer to see if I could get her to come back. This time, it took about a minute or two before she returned. She was still pretty weary of me. 5 minutes later, and she still hadn't come close to me, so I tried slowly pulling out a large handful of alfalfa. Alfalfa can be a really great training tool with positive reinforcement, especially with wild Mustangs, as they can be really weary of taking any other treat. They won't take carrots, apples, horse treats, grain, you name it. They're pretty skeptical of it, which makes sense. It's something new they haven't seen before and they're in survival mode. And just to be clear, I haven't yet started positive reinforcement, even though I do have alfalfa. I'm really just working to see if I can get her comfortable eating around me and in my presence. Eventually, she'll feel comfortable enough to eat out of my hand. But at this point, I do think I will be using positive reinforcement to start her. I haven't done every Mustang this way, but if they're more fearful, it's kind of my go-to now. Several minutes later, she decided she wanted some alfalfa. Now, as she was grabbing the alfalfa, she actually gave me the first touch right there, although I was pretty sure that she wasn't aware of that. Does that count as a first touch? Let me know what you think. One challenge when sitting so still is that you can get pretty stiff. I was trying to readjust my neck and accidentally spooked her here. It's a fairly common thing to have them spook when you reposition yourself. Sparrow was actually a lot worse, and even just raising one finger would set her off. And after the spook, it was, of course, more waiting. But she did eventually come back. She was still a bit jumpy. I unfortunately spooked her again, this time because I had ants biting my legs. But she still came back and came up close again. She really is quite lovely to watch. She again started unknowingly touching my hand, but I just stayed very still. I found it to be pretty amusing, but it does mean more waiting. Sometimes it can take several minutes for her to return. She approached me again and was eating the alfalfa underneath my hand. This time she gave my hand a little push away when she noticed it. But already her spooks are becoming a bit smaller and less dramatic. At this point, my arm was getting really tired holding the same position, so I decided to end the session. Once she is comfortably eating from my hand, then my plan is to start doing positive reinforcement with her. She'll have a lot of videos coming out, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. I still haven't given her a name, but she only just arrived here in Vermont this morning, so it's still pretty early. I'm just really excited that I was able to get the first touch on her first day here, whether or not she was intending to. Afterwards, I decided to try to jumpstart her eating green by sprinkling it in with some alfalfa. I didn't add a lot of grain, but I was curious if she would eat it if it was mixed with the alfalfa. It was sort of an experiment I was doing. I've introduced my other Mustangs to other foods by mixing it in with their soaked alfalfa pellets, so this was a little bit different. She started by doing a lot of blowing around the bucket, but eventually did stick her nose in, at least for a brief while. The real test would be to see if she would eat it if she was left with it overnight. The next morning came and I checked the pan. And the answer was no. She ended up eating the alfalfa around it instead. Oh well, some things just take time. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.